Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast. I'm Marc Givler. Got Kevin Noon with me here today. A lot to talk about with Ohio State recruiting. We did a brief one kind of around the Penn State weekend. We're going to do another one that's going to hit on some of that stuff. And then there's some new developments here that have come out we want to talk about as well. Obviously, Ohio State recently landed a commitment from Akron-Hoban 2025 linebacker Eli Lee. So that's something we want to talk about a little bit. We'll break him down here in a minute. There's a few other visitors from the Penn State weekend that we didn't talk about in the last one, and we're going to talk about on this one. You may have heard some of this if you listened to me on the morning show with Tom Moore on Buckeyes tomorrow morning. But I'm going to try and do a lot of different stuff today from what we recorded with Tom here last week. So, Kevin, Eli Lee in the fold. I don't think that was a big shock to anyone. In fact, I believe that's the guy we predicted would be next when asked on the message board. So not a big surprise, but commits coming out of the Penn State game. Just your thoughts on that and what looks like it'll probably be a pretty big linebacker class in 25, just kind of given the roster makeup right now.
Yeah, Eli Lee is a player that I like a lot. 6'3", 215. I think he could probably play a little bigger than that. Out of Hoban, a program that just is really good in the state of Ohio. Those of you who are in Ohio obviously know that. Those of you from beyond the borders, yes, Hoban is good. And Lee, I mean, it was just a matter of once Ohio State offered, and I didn't really think there was any doubt in my mind that Ohio State would offer him. It was just, you were on a countdown for when he would decide. He decided to go a little bit earlier than maybe some had anticipated, but he's just a guy that makes plays. I mean, is he that sexy guy out there that's going to sit there and just wow you with, these over the top crazy plays? No, maybe not, but he is going to be the guy. You're going to look at the stat book after the game and you're going to be like, how was he in on 11 tackles? Well, he was in on 11 tackles because he's super active and he's able to do a lot of things. So I think that he is a good basis for the beginning of this class. And I think he's going to be a player that people are going to be talking about throughout the class because a lot of times guys commit, especially this early, and are forgotten about. Eli Lee won't be one of those guys.
No, Hoban's in the midst of a playoff run right now. They are the heavy favorite in Division II in Ohio right now. So we will see him for sure here in the coming weeks, maybe even twice. If they get to the state championship game, which appears all but likely right now. They are clearly one of the two best teams in the state this year, in my opinion, along with St. Ed's, who's a Division I team, and those two played a really close game not too long ago. So just a big-time program with two kids that Ohio State's already offered in 2026 and a couple other guys in that class that Ohio State may offer. So getting the Hoban thing kind of – I've made a kind of a comment about this before. Getting the Hoban – pipeline maybe reestablished. There were some things that went on obviously with Todd Sibley, with Danny Clark, with Caden Clark, and just then of course they had Nolan Rumler there, who was a Michigan lock early in his recruitment, and it's just been a little choppy there at Hoban over the years. Even like Chip Trainum goes to Arizona State out of high school. You get Chip back in the fold. Now you've got Eli Lee committed, got the offers out to the 26s. Repairing relationships, getting back in there with one of the top couple programs in the state of Ohio, very important. Let's throw the Lee video on. And before this even gets started, he is a tackle machine. So that's just what he is. You're going to find him. He's Tommy Eichenberg kind of 2.0 in a way. There he is with a pick, actually. So not first highlight, he's not even a tackle. It's a pick six, but he's just a guy who finds the football. Just great instincts here. Look at him close on that, reading the quarterback and then making a real decision and just going. And that's kind of how Tommy Eichenberg plays. We watch him on Saturdays, and he's a guy who makes his read and goes. He doesn't spend a lot of time, not a lot of false steps and things like that. Here he is coming on a kind of a delay blitz, getting a safety. Again, I think he's a Mike. He basically plays that for Hoban for the most part. I think he's going to be that at Ohio State. Just a plugger kind of in the middle. He's more athletic than Tough Borland. He's probably closer to a Tommy Eichenberg in terms of athleticism, in terms of his ability to make plays. And he's an explosive tackler, as you've seen several times now. He doesn't just he doesn't drag guys down. He really puts them down. So this is a kid we saw early in the season make a ton of tackles in their big showcase game first week of the season. He's just had a great junior year, and that was rewarded with a scholarship offer by Ohio State at the beginning of October. And he obviously only took a couple weeks to think about it. But again, just as Kevin mentioned as well, just very active, You're not going to have a game where he doesn't make 8 or 10 tackles. He's just always around the football. Here he is again, reading it and just taking on the blocker, picking up, there it is, picking up the fumble, just awareness, instincts, everything on display here. And so I think it's a really good pickup. They need linebackers in 2025. I think it's going to be at least a 3 linebacker class. I could see a universe where it's 4, especially if like that 4th guy is like some type of like flex, stand up edge / linebacker type. So this is important. They get off to a good start here. They're in on some really good prospects outside of Eli Lee, just, out of state guys. Elijah Melendez is a guy from Florida. I think they have a great chance at, was up for the Penn State game. And then in state, you've got someone like Justin Hill at Winton Woods, who I think is probably one of the 2 or 3 best players in Ohio. And he's a guy who fits very well with someone like Eli Lee, because Justin Hill is an outside linebacker, maybe even a stand-up edge. My opinion, he was just built in a lab to play kind of an outside edge stand-up rusher type position. Now, how much Ohio State's going to utilize that moving forward over the next 3-4 years is, TBD. But, this doesn't impact taking someone like Justin Hill. It doesn't impact really anything at this point. You're going to take 3 or 4. So smart take to get on the board early. You still got a lot of good guys there. And then, see how the dominoes fall from there. But nice pickup for Ohio State. He's already told me that he's going to be a pretty big recruiter. He's been down to Ohio State a lot already. So he's going to be one of those guys who's going to be down on the big visit weekends and kind of helping James Laurinaitis and Jim Knowles put this defensive class together in 2025. And so you've got maybe him quarterbacking those efforts right now. Defensively, you've got Tavian St. Clair handling those efforts offensively. He's very active right now. So you've got a nice base of Ohio kids here. And I think that's going to continue. I kind of mentioned before the Penn State game, I think the next couple guys are going to be Ohio guys. And I think that's going to continue. I think they're in really good shape right now for Carter Lowe, the 2025 offensive tackle out of Toledo Whitmer. So this could be a nice little building of a class that starts in Ohio, Kevin. And that's kind of how their best classes generally go. If they can get that foundation in Ohio and get them in early and get them recruiting other players, that normally has led to their best recruiting classes.
Yeah, I always kind of laugh when I see guys put out a top 10 and they're down to a top 2 or they're down to a top 1. And we saw Carter Lowe just recently around the time that we're recording this put out a top 10, and I had to kind of snicker a little bit, or maybe it was even a top 5 Carter Lowe. And I'm like, that's more of a top 1, to be quite honest. I think that one could be coming here pretty soon, but a lot of guys want to follow a certain path, and that's to cut their list down and then maybe select from there. So we could see something sooner rather than later there potentially. But yeah, getting your in-state guys together and then being able to kind of move the fences out and go national is a good way to go, because that way you're getting the opportunity to look at the in-state guys. You're getting the opportunity to solidify the guys there, get them locked down, and then be able to cast the net out further. And generally your in-state guys, yes, you have to keep recruiting them throughout the process. They're going to be guys that are going to keep getting in their ear. Things change, things happen or whatever, but those are the guys you feel more secure with. And then you go out and you have to worry about fighting the battles out of state, holding on to a player from like Cocoa, Florida or something like that. But having Eli Lee on one side of the ball, having Tavian St. Clair on the other side of the ball, you have that peer recruiting going on. And I think that means a lot too.
Yep. So Penn State weekend already paying dividends. Another player it's paying dividends with who hasn't committed yet, and I don't think will in the immediate future, but I could see maybe doing so earlier than maybe I expected. And that is 5-star corner Devin Sanchez out of Houston, Texas, North Shore High School. Ohio State clearly in the lead right now, and that was kind of part of our preview piece was, Ohio State's in there with, A&M and Alabama. We felt Ohio State maybe had a slight edge going into the Penn State weekend. And the prediction in that piece was that Ohio State would enhance that lead coming out of the Penn State weekend. They've done that. Devin Sanchez has named them a pretty clear-cut leader at this point. And that's one of those types of recruitments you normally think, 5-star corner from Houston, that's one that could maybe go go the distance or go late into next summer at least. And I don't know. I could see that maybe moving up to the spring. I could see something maybe a little earlier than that. I'm not expecting anything right around the corner. You've got Alabama, A&M. You got every pro. I mean, I could sit here and list 30 programs that are all recruiting him. So there's going to be a lot of people in his ear trying to push him off of that. And here's the interesting part about kind of him coming out. It's one thing to say, oh, this is my top 3. This is my top 5. When you come out and you name a leader like that, what that does is that puts the target on Ohio State's back. So now you've got 30 teams essentially recruiting to keep you off of committing to Ohio State. So that changes the approach a little bit from the other teams, whereas now it's not just let's work our way up to the top. It's like, oh, this is who we have to be worried about, and let's figure out how we can keep him from committing there. So this puts the target on Ohio State's back a little bit, but I feel really good about where they stand with Sanchez.
Lost your mic for a second here. We'll just get you going again.
There we go. I think I bumped a cord. But yeah, I feel good about where they're at. Feel good that things are going to pretty much stay there. I'm not too worried about that one at this point, even though, again, the Alabamas and A&Ms of the world are going to keep at it. I think we got some film of Sanchez.
We do. Let me get going here.
This is Jeff Okudah 2.0, guys. Just long, tall, athletic, can run, instincts, everything. I mean, just watching the quarterback's eyes, just paying attention to what's going on to getting that overthrow, that tip. Here he is again, ball skills, going up, high pointing it, coming down like a receiver. Again, he's doing this at 6'1", 6'2". We've seen him at camp. He is legitimately that big. He is a tall corner. Again, it reminds me a ton of Jeff Okudah, just how physical he is, how competitive he is, and just the ball skills that Okudah had coming out, where he's not just a guy who deflects a lot of passes. He's a guy who gets a lot of interceptions just because of the way he can go up and get it. And, just a tremendous prospect. I think he's probably the top corner in the country in 2025. I know some places do have him ranked that high. I think some places have him second. I haven't seen a better one. And this is a guy that Ohio State has just completely made a priority, very much like Okudah. You knew Okudah's sophomore year, going into his junior year, that this was going to be their top guy. And this is how Devin Sanchez is in this class. So one thing that's helped them here is, well, there's two things that have helped them here. One thing that's really helped them here is they're getting back to being BIA. They're actually, their secondary's been phenomenal this year. I think a lot of the metrics have their secondary ranked number 1 in the country. Their pass defense ranked number 1 in the country so far. They're getting outstanding contributions from their corners. They've got, obviously, Denzel Burke is basically playing at an All-American level, but you're getting great years out of Jordan Hancock and Davison Igbinosun. So you've got all this positive momentum going for you in terms of your development. But you've also shown, and my goodness, was Penn State the perfect week to have Devin on campus. You've also shown that you're going to play the kids if they're ready. Denzel Burke goes down. They could have thrown in a veteran. They could have shuffled things around and done things in a way that kept the veterans in the secondary and just moved a guy here and slid in another veteran. But they put Jermaine Matthews out there on an island quite a bit in that Penn State game, and Jermaine had a tremendous game. So he's seeing that, they started Malik Hartford early in the year. They're going to play the young guys. They started Jair Brown last year for a game or two. So they're going to play the young guys if they're ready. And so I think those two things are working in their favor right now.
I agree. And that was the point that I really wanted to make was we've seen some years where Ohio State's offensive recruiting has really carried the class weight for the Buckeyes, and it's been a wait and see on defense. Well, we want to see if this defense has fixed itself, if this defense has gotten around. Well, this year we see what Jim Knowles' squad has been able to do. The Buckeyes are among the best defenses in the nation and in most of the metrics. So I think that people are buying into that fact. And Jim Knowles isn't somebody who is going to be jumping jobs every few years. Yeah, I mean, making the move up from Oklahoma State to Ohio State was a move that made sense just based on prestige and financial compensation, of course, and just the type of talent that you would be able to get in there and work with. So I don't see Jim Knowles moving to a head coaching job. That isn't really his DNA. I mean, he's been a head coach before. Now he's a coordinator. I think that's what he wants to do. And I think that Ohio State's recruiting on the defensive side of the ball is going to see quite the improvement. Really kind of, I think, kicking in with this class of 2025. Devin Sanchez comes from great athletic DNA. His mom ran track at UTEP. His dad played football at UTEP. He really is every bit of 6'1", 6'1+, as you'd mentioned, as we'd seen him on at a camp. And yeah, I really like where Ohio State stands there, and getting out there and being able to play Jermaine Matthews certainly is something that will be taken notice of. Of course, the thing is that if you play your kids too much, then it's like, well, how there's a ceiling that I'm going to be hitting there. But I think that Ohio State is in a good position. Ohio State playing a 4-2-5 type of defense, and not every. I mean, we talk about, it's a safety-driven defense in terms of what they do there. I mean, they have been playing some corner out at nickel, and there are some necessities for that. And I think that all of that will check the boxes for a lot of top players, i.e. Devin Sanchez.
Yeah, they have really kind of transitioned that nickel spot to more of a corner body type, athleticism type than a safety type this year with Jordan Hancock kind of taking control of that spot pretty often, unless obviously Sonny's going to play there when there's, run heavy formations and things like that. But they've really made this about corners this year. And, if you're Devin, you look at things and Jordan Hancock will be gone. Denzel Burke will be gone. Who am I missing? Davidson Igbinosun, will likely be gone.
Yeah, I mean, he's there 1 year top. I mean, he'll be gone by the time. Yeah, he'll be gone by that point. Yeah, I mean,
I think I don't think he'll be here.
Deck. It's a clear deck. You kind of wonder. I mean, you've got some younger guys. You got the kid out of Texas,
Calvin Simpson Hunt.
I mean, but there's going to be a lot of opportunity there. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's redshirting this year that we don't know necessarily what's going to be there. And if you're Jeff Okudah 1.2. I mean, sign me up. Sign me up for that. I mean, if he's Jeff Okudah 2.0, hell yeah. I mean, bring him in, let him compete, let the best guys go. We're really singing some different songs about, in terms of we as in just in general, people were very disappointed in the secondary recruiting under Tim Walton and Perry Aliano, and it seems to be rounding into shape. I mean, obviously you miss out on a couple of big names along the way, but have no fear. Those 5-star hits are coming.
Yeah. And even like with Devin, it kind of reminds me of a situation that maybe like Jermaine Matthews walked into this year, where he's not going to be the starter unless there's an injury or two, but they're able to get him a lot of time. And Matthews will be a junior when Sanchez is on campus. So Calvin Simpson Hunt will be a redshirt soft third-year player. So, it could be a similar situation where what Matthews is walking into this year, where it seems, highly likely by year 2, he's going to be a starter in some capacity, seeing how they'll shuffle this around, because Denzel Burke has played his way to probably an early entry to the NFL draft. And you could see that happen with the 2025 corners that come in, where Jermaine Matthews is the veteran junior corner and he, has a big year and he could be off to the NFL. And then you're in there year 2 as a starter. So they've got some tools that they can use to sell these top 2025 guys, where it's not just fluff, it's legitimate opportunity. So that'll be interesting to kind of see how it plays out just beyond Devin Sanchez. There's, other corners are going to be in on, but I know Devin's the guy that has kind of been the focus here. They've got some Ohio guys who I think are corner safety hybrids. Like I think Dorian Brew, who's now in Texas, obviously is probably a safety. I think Trey McNutt is probably a safety, but they're actually very good fits in the defense as maybe they're nickels because they do have some cover skills. They've got great size. So this will be an interesting defensive back class, but a lot of good targets there. Devin Sanchez, things going well there coming out of the Penn State weekend. What else do we have here video-wise? We got one more. Naon Montgomery.
Naon Montgomery. I was just going to say I had it listed as Montgomery, and we talked about doing the show a couple days ago, and life happens, and I'd forgotten. But yeah, Naon Montgomery, another very exciting prospect out there.
Yep. So 4-star receiver out of Florida, top 100 guy. I think potentially could be a 5-star guy. I saw him over the summer. He's really, really good. He made his first visit to Ohio State for the Penn State game. We didn't talk about him in the last couple of recruiting episodes I've done, so I want to get to him here. Probably one of the guys, in terms of the national level prospects, that Ohio State has the best chance with. He's got a national recruitment going on, but Brian Hartline is his best relationship right now, and it's hard to see that changing. When Hartline decides that he's going all in, that's usually a very good sign for the Buckeyes. So that's happened here, but let's throw in a little bit of, let's throw up his video. Just want everyone to get introduced to him. Just a freak athlete. Great run after the catch guy, great ball skills, converted quarterback. So a couple interesting things here. And here he is in the return game. He's a converted quarterback. And so he's only been playing receiver a couple of years, and it's staggering how good his route running is, how good his ball skills are already. As a guy who's only been focusing on receiver for a couple of years. Also, initially from Rhode Island. So not your classic Florida kid. Goes to Cardinal Newman in West Palm Beach, Florida, but has only been down there a couple of years. They're from Rhode Island. So maybe not the Florida ties that some of these other guys have, but you can see he's a willing blocker. He's a guy who at 6'1", maybe 6'2", can stretch the field, but he also gives you a big body target in the red zone. And again, like we talked about earlier, he's really good after the catch. So he's a guy who over the summer was one of the most impressive 2025 receivers that I saw. And so I think between the need to continue to replenish the room, what we've seen out of Hartline so far in 25 and who he's targeting, this kid makes a lot of sense. Boggs from Cocoa, Florida is already in the class. Jevin Boggs. He's probably going to be a slot guy. So you're looking for those outside guys in this class. And I think Naon Montgomery has a great chance to be one of those guys. So that's a guy that everyone needs to kind of get to know here in 2025 as we ramp things up there. Kevin, you have not seen Montgomery. Well, you saw him at the game. I think you saw him come out, but you have not seen him actually in person as far as doing anything football related. But let's talk about the bigger picture on that. So we had Montgomery there. You had all these 2026 guys. We have stories on all of them on BuckeyeHuddle.com if you want to go read about them. There's a bunch of 2026 guys. Aaron Gregory, Brody Keefe. There's a bunch of them. We've written stories, interviews with all of them on BuckeyeHuddle.com. As you're standing there and all these receivers are just walking out the tunnel as recruiting visitors, is Brian Hartline ever going to just have a down year? Just looks like this thing is just on autopilot right now.
Yeah, and that was the point I was going to make. Everybody's wondering when is going to be the 1 year of separation. Okay, we need to have a year where it's not as much of a big haul to allow some of these other guys to have some run, and that doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, obviously, the 26 class is already highlighted by Chris Henry Jr., who committed to Ohio State a while ago, and then you have all of these other big receivers who are in the class, and you figure that 26 is going to be a big year, but 25 could shape up to be that too. And I mean, once again, it goes to highlight the fact that you have to be ready when opportunity knocks for you. And I'm not here to be any recruit's guidance counselor, but if your school allows for early graduation, I would highly recommend it, because you want to be able to get that off-season training, that spring practice at Ohio State to get noticed. Because even here in this current class, we're seeing Carnell Tate get run and Brandon Ennis not getting as much run because of when each of them were able to enroll. And I think each of the kids in their own sets of talents are, they're very equal in terms of what their ceiling can be. But, Carnell Tate had the advantage of going to IMG and being able to get there early. So, I think that as long as Brian Hartline is part of the Ohio State coaching staff, receiver recruiting is going to be huge. And I think that Ohio State is going to be a wonderful destination for schools looking for players who are going to be coming out into the transfer of guys that are getting trained in one of the best systems out there that may just not be able to find their way to the field when you see former walk-ons at Ohio State go out and being able to compete at the FBS level. So, if a player is just unlucky with how the dice land, they may not get an opportunity, and it's no fault of their own just because of how good that room is.
Yeah, he's got it rolling right now. There's no doubt. So, yep, receivers were a big storyline of the Penn State weekend. Just Brian Hartline's getting a bunch of his top guys on campus for that weekend already, and so he's off and running in 25 and 26. Let's talk a little bit about the defensive line. So we got a couple quick defensive line updates here before we sign off. Amaris Williams, top 100 defensive lineman, Clinton, North Carolina, committed to Florida, made his official visit for Penn State weekend. I was not surprised he didn't flip immediately, but I definitely thought it was possible he would. That obviously has not happened yet. He's got some other visits coming up. But here's the good news. He is expected back on campus at Ohio State on November 11th, which I believe is Minnesota, right? Minnesota's the 11th.
That's Michigan State. Michigan
the 11th, Minnesota's 18th.
Minnesota's the 18th. So
okay.
Yeah, Michigan State is.
Michigan State.
I don't know if that's the weekend that Jordan Seaton's supposed to be in town or not, but they're setting up some visits for those last two home dates.
It is, and yes, so the 11th is looking like a pretty big visitor weekend. London Merritt, I've talked about this before, top 100 defensive end out of Atlanta Woodward Academy, rescheduled the Penn State weekend as an unofficial to return for November 11th for an unofficial. So that'll be like his fourth or fifth unofficial to Ohio State already, one of the most highly recruited 2025 defensive ends. So great start there. But Amaris Williams coming back. Looks like he's going to get to Florida the week before, Tennessee the week after. We'll see if Tennessee happens or not. My guess is it probably will at this point. He's made the visits. He's scheduled these things out. But I still think Ohio, despite the fact that he has not flipped yet, I still think Ohio State is in pretty good shape there. And again, him rescheduling on his own dime, if that actually goes through, that's an amazing sign for Ohio State. That you don't see that a lot with guys like that at the end of the recruiting process coming back up for an unofficial after they've used their official during the fall. So that's pretty significant if that comes together and stays and he follows through on that. Carlin Jones, new offer, committed to Nebraska. He's out of Bay City, Texas, which I believe has the biggest Bucky's, or am I correct? Or is that Baytown?
That's Baytown, and I actually that's the first one I ever went to. But I think the one outside of New Braunfels is the largest one, to be quite honest, out by San Antonio.
Okay,
yeah, the one by where Schlitterbahn, the big water park, is.
I'm gonna have to go out there sometime. I'm in San Antonio every year, so I'm gonna eventually have to wander out that way and check that Bucky's out. Bay City, Texas, committed to Nebraska. Mostly rated high 3-star. I think one site has him in their top 250 as a 4-star. He is, I think a lot of people, when they offered him the other day, were like, well, that means, because they're both, he's 6'3", 270. Amaris Williams is 6'3", 270. And so I think a lot of people were just like, oh, well, that means they're not getting Amaris Williams. That's not true. They are telling Amaris Williams he can start out at defensive end, play strong side end. We'll see if his body keeps up with that, but that's what they're recruiting him to do right now. They are recruiting Jones as a 3-tech inside player. So one does not have anything to do with the other at this point. So he is also going to visit on the 11th. I talked to him. He's got an official visit for the 11th. He kept mentioning the NFL to me in like almost every question I asked. And some of them weren't even really questions that had a whole lot to do with the NFL. It just like kept coming out of his mouth about wanting to get to the NFL, wanting to be developed for the NFL. And when you say things like you love the Ohio State program and everything about them, but then you keep talking about the NFL, it feels like if green light is given there on the official, that could be something to watch. Ohio State could certainly be on a flip watch there, on the good end of flip watch there. But again, nothing to do with Amaris Williams, nothing to do with Deshaun Warner out of Kansas, the 4-star who's a pure pass rusher who's been shooting up recruiting boards lately. He's coming in November as well. So I think there's room to take all three. I think there's room to take 3 guys, especially if 2 of them can play outside. They need to take a big class, but the Jones' offer goes back to kind of what I've talked about. And you and I have talked about this on the show a few times. They have a lot of defensive tackles who could be exiting the program after this year. And it's funny because before the season, I think if you would have asked the Ohio State staff, in a moment of privacy and off the record, you would have asked them, who are you worried about on the defensive line in terms of leaving early? And when you focus on tackle, what you probably would have got back was Michael Hall's gone, and we hope Ty Hamilton comes back for his 80th year at Ohio State and takes the extra year. So we have another depth guy, and we hope Tyleik Williams doesn't make a decision and go pro. What instead has happened is Tyleik Williams has played himself to the point where I think he's leaving. And maybe Michael Hall hasn't had quite the year we thought he would have, but I don't think much has changed there either. I love Ty Hamilton, the person. He's been a solid contributor for Ohio State for a few years now, but that's not going to be enough next year. And so I think between the portal this offseason, where they could go back, and they've got some young guys, don't get me wrong, Cade McDonald, Hero Canoe, Tywan Malone, all primed to make the leap. But I think they're going to look for a difference-making defensive tackle in the portal. And I think because they could lose 2 or 3 guys in that defense, I mean, they've got some vets there. And that's if nobody transfers.
Right.
So they clearly are insuring themselves against like 3 defensive tackles leaving with eligibility still on the table.
I think if you have tackle in your positional name that you are highly coveted in the portal, whether it be defensive tackle or offensive tackle, and not to bring up any sore subjects in terms of where the fans are with where offensive line is, but defensive tackle, I think it is important to make sure that you are prepared, and you need to have young guys who are coming up through the system. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You have to also look at the portal and find somebody who can step in. If you lose all of those snaps between those 3 guys, let's say all 3 of them go, Williams, Hall, and Hamilton, I mean, you're losing the vast majority of your experience at the position. So you need to bring in the guy who's been there, been to the fair and seen the bear. So I think it's all important, but keep it moving. We're seeing Hero Canoe out there in high leverage minutes against Wisconsin. People thought that Tywan Malone would come in and maybe see a bunch of action this year. That hasn't happened, but that's good news. That's not a Tywan Malone hasn't been able to crack the depth chart. That's just that the depth chart has separated themselves from the rest of the pack in a lot of ways. And at that point, you just don't want to burn the year of eligibility, even though I always caution people, a lot of players aren't staying 5 years anyway, at least the players that you want when you're a program like Ohio State, barring, legitimate injuries happening along the way and things just kind of work out that way. But I think that it's really important. I mean, of course, I'll throw out that fans are still going to try and watch what happens with a couple of the names that Ohio State missed along the way as well, and whether or not you can get some visits. But as we sit here and, it's the beginning of November, and National Signing Day, early signing day is 5 weeks away, 6 weeks away, depending on where exactly it falls in December. It's not all that early, if we're being quite honest with ourselves. You need to have some plans there. I mean, Ohio State brought in Dominic Kirks earlier in the season to take a look at him. There are a lot of names in play, whether or not you're offered or not offered at this point.
Yep, and Dom Kirks is still in play. That remains kind of where we left it last episode, which is wait for the official visit. They're not going to bring him in on an official visit if they're not going to take him. They're not going to bring him in on an official visit if they don't think they can flip him. And he's not going to come on an official visit unless he's highly considering flipping. So until that official visit is scheduled, you just kind of put him on the back burner, but he is still in play. Marquise Lightfoot is still in play. That right now seems to be an obstacle of Larry Johnson's longevity, I guess. One of those situations that seems to come up every year where they've got to convince a kid that either Larry Johnson is going to be there, or if he's not going to be there, that everything's going to be fine if he's not. So that's the uphill battle there on Lightfoot right now. But again, I think they can flip Carlin Jones. Jones a little different than Williams right now. Williams will take today. Jones, they're just getting to know. So that's one of those bring him in on the official two-way interview type of things. Do we like you? Do you like us? Let's make sure this is a fit and then go from there. That's kind of the Jones visit right now. Williams can pull the trigger whenever. Deshaun Warner, they probably want to get up to campus. If he forced their hand, I think they'd probably take him. But I think Deshaun Warner's kind of in that boat as well. It's like, just let's get up here. Let's spend 2 days together and just, make sure everyone's cool and go from there. So a lot to watch with defensive line recruiting here down the stretch. Big names coming in. A lot of, look, Marc Williams is a top 100 guy. Deshaun Warner may be a top 100 guy before this is all said and done. He is on a upward rocket ship trajectory right now. So we'll see where some of these guys end up, but clearly they're starting to widen the net a little bit. Film's coming out, so there's a lot of targets left. So if you're down on defensive line recruiting, let's see where things are at, like on November 15th. Because they got a lot of guys coming in on November 11th and coming up. So we'll see, right? We'll see what happens. Not promising anything, but I like I said, I feel good about a Marc Williams. And then the Jones and Warner things, like, okay, just how do those visits go? And then we go from there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all I can say is that, Ohio State is not holding steady in terms of recruiting for the class of 24. Keep it locked in at Buckeye Huddle as Marc Givler tracks everything down as it gets there. A couple of big recruiting weekends coming up, and then early national signing period here in the beginning of December. And then, you reset the deck and kind of see if there's anything that you're still chasing for the traditional signing period. But, I'm excited as a longtime recruitnik and somebody who gets to be part of Southern Swing. It's always some of my favorite content out there.
Yeah. And it's never too early to talk about Southern Swing. But I was just looking through things yesterday, like a preliminary. I start planning this thing like months in advance. Now, unfortunately, because of the way recruiting timelines play out, sometimes you can plan everything you want, and then within a week or two of the actual Southern Swing kicking off, we got to move stuff around because a kid commits somewhere else, or a new kid is on the radar, or a new offer, or a new development. Something happens. But I was actually just looking this week, and there's a lot of stuff for us. There's a lot of stuff for us. We're going to be able to, unless things go really sideways, we're of course going to have a ton of stuff in Florida again. We're going to have a ton of stuff in Georgia again. North Carolina is the one that's opened up a little bit here in the 24 through 26 classes. Like if a Marc Williams would flip, I don't know that he's going to enroll early. I guess we'll find out. But there's a lot of underclassmen in North Carolina right now. So we're going to be covering a lot of territory for that. So stay tuned for that as well in a few months. But appreciate everyone watching, listening. Let us know in the comments if there's some things you want us to hit on for the next show. I'm going to do these every week here moving forward. So make sure we get one of these out every week. So if there's some things we didn't talk about today you want to talk about, let us know. We'll fit those into the next show. And again, appreciate everyone watching, listening, and we will catch you next time.